Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Snap No Tap video podcast. And as you might have seen, we're not having an introduction video like we normally do because of technical things, because our wonderful Joe Cardinal, the one and only, is out of town for 3 weeks, I believe it is, living it up out east somewhere, parts unknown. And he'll be back either the last week end of this month of August, or he will be here for September. So we got the one and only Brian Deneve filling in along with Nico. So I just want to welcome you guys and say hello, guys. And how's things been with you, especially you, Brian, since we haven't seen you?
Hey, things are going great. Had a great weekend. Weather's been really nice in Wisconsin. We got these spotty rain type things going on. You probably got that in Illinois too. And I was actually out on a big bike ride with some other guys and having a few beers at some outdoor venues and kind of race against time with, well, where can we go to hunker down, that type of stuff. And I don't know, harkens back to some really first world version of like survivalism, you know what I mean? But like, oh, where else can we go drink beer and not get washed out? So that was my Saturday.
We got to get Kurt Russell, the Escape from New York thing. How you doing, New York? Nico, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Yeah, how you doing? I'm doing about the same. Nothing new, same old, same old. But yeah, it's different without Joe. He handles a lot of it. We had done some practicing last year because we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the podcast, and so we had Joe handle all of it. So I think probably for the next couple of weeks we may be not doing the intro, or who knows, we'll play it by ear. But that's not the big deal. But no, it's coming up on, think about it, in about a month. It'll be Labor Day here in America. So that's the unofficial end of summer. Wow. Time is flying.
Yeah, we'll have to have a birthday cake, like a podcast birthday cake, like a big microphone or something. I don't know. Get some ideas.
Did you get my birthday well wishes, by the way? I sent you a nice thing on your Facebook page.
Yeah, I believe I did.
Okay,
I didn't respond directly to all my Facebook, so.
Well, you have thousands. It's hard.
So many fans, right? Yeah.
Well, ever since you did American Pie, it's just been crazy for you.
Well, I mean, MILF is in popular culture and mainstream vernacular, thanks to me, right? 1998. So. Man, we saw that together, Tony. You and I. Remember, we were in the theater.
Yeah.
I think you, if I recall, you'd already seen the movie. You just liked it so much you went again with me, and I was like, sure, all right. And sure enough, my guy John Cho, you're like, hey, I remember I saw this guy. He reminded me of you, and I'm like, So
when I first saw that movie, I screamed out, it's Brian, man, shit. Because with you back then, who knew? You could it could have been you for all I know. You were into a lot of things, and so. Yeah, Nico.
I didn't tell you. When I was staying in California for that summer, near campus at UCLA, and I actually literally had some girls, in their 20s, apartment building, that thought I was him. Like there was 2 cousins that were coming in from Canada. They were also staying the summer, and and I had spoken to these 2 before, just casually, and introduced myself, but one cousin was, swear to God, like, no, that's him. And the other guy's like, no, it's not. We've talked to this guy. And so, yeah, she enlightened me after this was when I think maybe the 3rd one was coming out. It wasn't the first one. It was one of the subsequent sequels, which between direct to video, I think they have like 20 versions now if you ever want to watch them. But yeah, so. Yeah,
I've only seen the first one, and I think maybe the second or parts of the second. I never saw any of the other ones, but the first one was, it was good. I enjoyed it. It's my high school was anything like that. Was nothing like that, I should say, but it still was a fun movie to watch. Hey, speaking of that, I just found out that Markie Post passed away, and she was in There's Something About Mary. She was the mother.
Yeah.
And Fall Guy and all that stuff. Night Court, 70 years old. Wow.
Cancer.
Yes.
I was going to mention that because she was a really nice looking lady during Night Court, if you recall.
Yes.
Even up into, so yeah, that's unfortunate. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I remember from Fall Guy first, because I used to watch that because I was into the pickup truck, and Heather Thomas was on there. I think that was her name. But yeah, I always thought I like Marky Post. It's just
So
yeah,
what did she play in Fall Guy? Lee Majors was the lead, but
yeah. She was like I forgot what like his boss, not a boss, but like she would send him on jobs or something like that. I would think he was a bounty hunter. So I think she would get him cases or something. I don't remember. It's been the '80s since I've seen the Fall Guy, but I used to like
sure.
that truck.
Well, right. No, that was a big thing. We're going back. Nico, I know you're a few years younger, but this was the early 80s, was like the Heather Thomas, Heather Locklear was on
Yeah,
TJ Hooker, Shatner was playing the cop.
yeah.
And then we also had but Night Court, because I remember the thing with Night Court was she was always like in those like, 19, she was played a lawyer working for the city or the county, whoever the prosecutor and defense were at the time, a public defender. And there were always like those random episodes where she's taking off like the power suit and putting on some like cocktail dress and just obviously, gorgeous, you know what I mean? But it was kind of like that average to frumpy looking, not even frumpy looking woman, but then they always like doll her up to be like, whoa, the big reveal, big surprise. And you can pretty much tell depending on, if a woman's attractive, no matter what she's wearing, it's kind of hard to hide. But yeah, that was a good show too. I enjoyed that back in the day.
Bull, remember him, the tall guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got to see much of that show. I know what was his name, Harry Anderson. I forgot. The star. He was a magician. I seen him do some magic.
Like you saw him live?
No,
Oh.
just on TV back then on shows that would feature magic or something.
Yeah, magic is a whole. Actually, Joe Cardinal, who's not with us today, but he's such a huge force that we're talking about him now. He and I had a conversation once on how that's changed with the proliferation of the social media and the internet, like to where it's so difficult for magicians to sometimes do tricks because people can just look them up. You know what I mean? And he told a story which I thought was ridiculous because it was I think it was he was at a either he knew the magician or it was just one of his friends. It was at some kind of like kids party, like teenagers or Boy Scouts or something, and the magician is doing his tricks and real time, these little imps are looking the stuff up online and like calling him out on how he's doing this jobs, with their mobile phones.
It's sad to hear because the
Right.
one about the magic community, like when they were pirating all of my stuff and everybody else's stuff, the magic community wasn't doing that. They were like really in lockstep about that. They were they were all about protecting the secrets of let's call it a craft that's gone back over 1,000 years with magic. And now that you're telling me this, because I was unaware of all of this.
Mhm.
That's sad. And
Yeah.
yeah, this social media, it's while I hear people say, oh, there's good things about it, I gotta believe the negative just demolishes the positive. It just far outweighs the positive.
I mean, some of that stuff is beyond tricks, though. It's like you ever see how David Blaine could take a nail and just put it inside a board? I mean, I don't think that's a trick. I think that's more of like practice and special techniques on some of those things.
Well, he's not very highly regarded in the magic field, but
Oh, really?
no, but the thing is, yeah, just like techniques, people could say, well, you pirate a video, but you still have to practice the techniques. Well, that's not the thing. You're taking money away from the performer. So magic is all about the illusion,
Mhm.
the ooh and ah, and that's why most solid magicians will only do the trick once, maybe twice, because if you do it enough, the person's going to catch on, and then it loses its allure. So regardless of if because even like sleight of hand, I mean that takes a lot of practice, lots. Like card manipulation takes a lot of practice, but it does lose some luster when you know how the trick is done. So
Yeah.
yeah, but the reason that other magicians can enjoy other shows, yeah, they know how the trick's done 99% of the time, but it's the skill, the performer that it's like, wow, okay, this guy, Brian Deneve is really a good manipulator. He's got a lot of talent. But yeah, when you have little kids or whoever that are doing it in real time and then kind of like heckling the magician. Who wants to put themselves in that position? Who wants to do that? No.
Yeah, that's BS. That's even, if you listen to any of the comedians who have podcasts now, and there's, dozens, hundreds at this point, but that's a big thing that they talk about is the intellectual theft that goes on with either joke stealing or number two, just not even allowing, I think even like high profile guys like Dave Chappelle don't even allow phones to be even present or out like during his performance because he's touring with these jokes and, it's got obviously a specific setup to timing to delivery. And if you've already heard that ahead of time, it just takes it completely away, at that point. So there's been times and, where they've been literally like bouncers have come seize the phones until after the show because, by direction of the performers. So it's understandable for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's like with martial arts seminars, a lot of times filming was not allowed because the host, or not the host, but the performer would, that's his material and he would like to sell that. If somebody's videoing, okay, so here, let's say you charge $100 a person, you got 10 people to show up, that's $1,000. Now, let's say somebody's going to film this and then upload it. Well, then why would anybody want to pay the $100? They'll be like, well, I'll just wait a week because Joe Blow is going to upload it. So now all of a sudden the guy can't even do a seminar because nobody's wanting to show up. And this has been, it's a battle. It really is. And another problem that I've read about is editing. People will record something, either audio or visual, and then edit it to make the performer sound really bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could say something like, boy, Joe's not feeling well. I hope he gets better and never dies or something. And then you could say, boy, Joe's not feeling well. I hope he dies. They could edit it out,
Sure.
That kind of shit. And that happens.
That's the issue with big tech censorship, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to get on a political rant, but there are certain people with their personalities or things they've said that have been controversial that they'll get essentially canceled or censored or shadow banned or whatever, deplatformed. So the entirety of the conversation may be this, but then somebody who's a critic of that person can slice and dice, edit it in a way and package it. Those people may not be the people who are the critics of this particular original individual may still be able to propagate their footage or videos. And so anybody who walks away so then all of a sudden, the general public or the audience now has a different view of that. Whoever it is, political pundit or something. I mean, there's, I could throw in 10 different names. I'm not going to, but that's an issue. I feel that's a concern,
Well, I was just
absolutely.
I was just doing a Zoom with a husband and wife regarding training. And it's like, well, I read that, BJJ says this and that catch wrestling is that. I said, it's propaganda. It's not true, but it's repeated. They repeat the lie so many, the people on the internet so many times over so many years that people just, tend to accept it. And it's like, not true, absolutely not true. And that happens quite a lot. Even in our regular interactions with people, somebody may say, well, you said this. No, you're taking it out of context. I didn't say that. Or, you didn't say that. You know how that is. But yeah, with the social media or internet in general, things can just take a life of its own. It did in the past. I can remember in the let's say for sure the 80s, but in the 70s, where there would be people that would pass out like hand printed stuff, okay, of whatever nature. I remember there was this pamphlet going around in my high school, and it was titled The Universal Law of Man. That was the title of it. Now, I don't remember everything about it. I did read it, but in essence, it was some guy who just made up this list. It was like 10 or 12 pages of universal laws of man, the history of the hidden secrets of the world, and all of that stuff. And some of it was just crackpot theories. But imagine if if the internet was going on back then. That thing could have went viral, and who knows, like we have now. So yeah, it always was around, I would guess. Just it was a little bit harder for that stuff to proliferate than it is today.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, I mean, all of those. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting phenomenon. Let's just put it that way. You
Well,
know,
eventually, things are going to change, and people are not going to have the access to the information like they have. I mean, it's changing already. I know people in businesses who are no longer even doing like I have that private membership thing. They won't even do that because of piracy. They're just, the people are just fed up with it. They're just tired of it. It's like, enough with the stealing. Stop stealing everything from everybody. Now with rock concerts and rock musicians and things, their one option was kind of like touring. So people would say, "Oh, it's okay if we pirate because then they can tour." Well, no. Look what happened with the pandemic, or just whatever. You have health issues, or whatever. There's no justification for stealing somebody's property. Their hard work. There's just no. Yeah, it's just not right.
Yeah, that's got to be hard for musicians these days because it's like you can access pretty much any type of music you want online, and people can download it, and there's ways around it without paying for it. That's got to be a tough business as well.
Yeah, it. Like I said, I don't know when it'll happen, but something's going to have to change because people like smaller, like guys at my level, small individual types of people, who don't sign Hollywood contracts or big recording contracts. We have no recourse, man. We just get shut down, period. There's just no way to go on. So
Tony, since we touched on magicians earlier, which what are some common themes? I'm just wondering, because you often talk about, when we're doing in training and catch wrestling or even fighting in general, the idea of, I hear certain things, like you've mentioned things about when you're attacking, like in an interval method, you create an illusion to your opponent about how maybe heavily conditioned you are or how aggressive you are, because you're basically breaking up the rhythm of your attacks, so to speak. Like that's one thing. And I've heard I think you've even used the term sleight of hand when it came to, for example, reaching for a specific limb, but you're not even thinking about that limb that you're attacking. It's the other one but you want to elicit a certain response or reaction to try to, go for this essentially a combination move. But I don't know, anything worth, touching on that right now when it comes to application?
yeah, well, first of all, let's clarify that I'm not a magician. I mean, I'm half-assed. I used to like to do card tricks at a very, 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 very poor level, but I could do a few little things. But one of the biggest things is misdirection. Okay, everything a magician, a pro does is calculated. Okay, there's nothing by accident. So normally when they're doing something, they're doing it purposely to draw your attention to that. Meanwhile, they're doing something else surreptitiously. And then even in the world of gambling, 3-card monte or the shell game, or guys that are really good card mechanics, manipulators. It's all based on psychology. These people really understand it, about people's attention, and that's how it is. That's how I approach fighting. A lot of misdirection, and you hit on it. Like, for example, I may grab your wrist or whatever, and that's exactly, you're thinking, okay, he's going for, I don't know, top wrist lock or something. No, maybe I'm not. Okay, I want to elicit something else. Like when I rip, I may rip you high to get up in your upper body to just get a reaction. The rip itself isn't designed. Let's say one particular rip isn't designed to end the fight. It's designed to misdirect or guide you or lead you in a certain direction. So to get specific about what this private Zoom lesson was about today, the guy said, well, in the BJJ world, they say position over submission, and the catch world is submission over position. And I said, that's just not true. What it is submission is the ultimate, whatever the submission, the concession hold, or the strike may be. But it isn't even about position. It's about control. And I try to explain to him, we could have a position that's, in the BJJ world dominant, but one slight little variance, the position stays the same, but now you're no longer in control. The person who has the dominant position is now the victim here. He's not in the dominant, he's going to lose. So that's what the way I approach fighting in that concept, in that context, is like a magician. I'm always leading you, never really revealing what the ultimate thing here is going to be. I want you to be completely confused, exhausted with thoughts. Now, you also brought up about the conditioning and how I can give the impression of, like being, I never gas. Well, no. What I would do back in the day was I would go, because of the way I trained, I would go into bursts, like high full blast bursts for like, let's say 15, 20 seconds, whatever it may be. And then I could relax a little bit. That's my recovery. And you just keep doing it again, because my recovery, I trained so that my recovery period would be very little, very short. So that gave the impression, let's say I was going just for the hell of it for like a minute, that might give the impression that, man, he went nonstop for 1 minute. Well, I didn't. I had like maybe 4 sets, 15 seconds or whatever. I'm just pulling numbers out. But so that's an illusion. So it's all about not letting you get set, not just physically, but not allowing you to get set mentally. I don't want you to know what's happening. I want you on the edge of your seat, so to speak, much like a magician would be. What's he going to do? Oh my goodness, look at that at the end. I never expected that giant lemon to be underneath that cup and ball thing, And I don't know that this is how I initially designed it. Like I cannot sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I patterned this all off of a magician. If anything, when I really got into the study of jazz, I've mentioned this many times, and I learned the theories, the thought process of how to improvise. That really made it, so much better. But it was just a coincidence that that's just how I fought. I fought like a magician, just never letting you figure it out.
I think a big part of that is not even just mentally having that, but even through your training application, being able to execute that when you wanted to. You obviously had to have a certain level of, I guess it'd be like an anaerobic burst ability with your conditioning in order to be able to turn that up, because some people don't train that way. You obviously have to have an understanding from a technical aspect of luring to a specific limb or a part of the body, then going to the other thing. So yeah, I mean, I can see where it needs to be, that intersection or that integration needs to be a big part of just how you train, let alone pull it off, just because that's what you're thinking.
Well, that's it. And, that's how, jazz musicians approach it. They do specific training to improvise, and they have what's called patterns or crutch licks as well. There's a misconception that every jazz musician, they're always doing something completely new. That's not true. In a way, yes, they can play the same song 10 different ways, but there's an outline that most of them follow. And there are what they call crutch licks that people will rely on. We do the same thing, or at least I'll speak for myself. I do the same thing when I fight. I'll improvise, but there are patterns that I will go for, but then I start mixing them together. It's kind of like, and then it becomes like random chaos, right? So you don't really know. And unlike music,
it's like go-tos, basically. You have
your go-to
improvising, but something you might need to go back to another place or anher way, because that's your fallback.
Yeah, and I have safety zones too when I fight. I have safe houses, so to speak, where just because music is like, it's all about me, the performer. It's really not an interaction unless you're doing a give and take with a fellow musician. But with fighting, it's all reaction. So I may have one plot in my head, how I want to approach taking you out, but you may react in a different way. Okay. So now I have to do this a different way. Well, that's how it is in jazz. So if we're trading 4s or 8s as a musician, I may play some sort of lick here, And now you did something that I'm listening while I'm playing with you. I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm going off of what he just did. So my original thought where I think I was going with this is now changed because you did something that stirred me creatively in a different way. Well, that's how it is with fighting, you know. So you may have an idea, but things may have to change. So that's why you have to practice fighting with improvisation. You just do. Not saying you don't drill over and over and over a certain move, but eventually you have to become a free thinker here, and start having some original thought, because you may get, you know, tied down, so to speak, and not be able to finish this guy off, or it may take a long time to do. So, but this again harks back again with the magic. You know, the magic is all about, you know, just not letting the spectators really know, or be just so awed at the end. And that's what fighting should be like. At the end, you know, you should have been able to, in quote unquote, blow this guy away. You know, you should have been able to take him out, and perhaps in a way that they never saw coming.
Yeah, Tony, and to touch on that specific thing, like where you're saying to improvise, I think it really helped me that some of the drills that you put me through, like for example, like with the double wrist lock or the top wrist lock, you make us go live and just kind of look for that in any position, in any way possible, to try to find it. That really helped me out a lot, as opposed to just practicing the technique from just one position or one certain way, because you can really see it from many different positions and different angles and different setups, different ways to get it when you're going live, and you're not just trying to, you know, you have a specific goal to find that in any way possible. To me, that really helped me to improvise.
Well, I'm glad. And for those out there, see, so like most people have never met me, right? Or if they did, it was at one seminar. You spend a moment of time with me, 2 hours, whatever it is, 3 hours. But yeah, I'll teach you the mechanics of the move, and yes, you'll learn it from a position. It doesn't matter what position at this point. It's just, here's the mechanics of the move. You got to understand the whole inside and out. But yeah, then you got to eventually, you can't, because I've trained some advanced guys in different styles that are like, wow, I never knew I could do that move from here. Well, yeah, because you're only looking at everything from a position, where you have to look at it in the bigger concept. You know, there's so much more to it. And the majority of things happen during transitions. I've said this till we're blue in the face. You want your opponent to be moving, so they're vulnerable. Okay. Now, when I mean moving, I don't necessarily mean, you know, 20 feet away, but, you know, you want their limbs up, down, open, close, you know, so you can create an attack, and end this. So yeah, that's part of improvising, Nico. It's learning to see things, you know, non-traditionally, let's put it that way. So when I had you guys doing those practice drills of how to see a submission when you're watching a movie or a television show, or when you're on a public bus and you're looking at somebody else scratching their head, and you're looking at them and figuring all the ways that you can submit them. This is what helps you practice your improvisation. So like a jazz musician may take a song like Mary Had a Little Lamb, right? Mary Had a Little Lamb. And they'll be going like ba ba da ba doo ba da ba da ba da da, you know, just to themselves, right? They're improvising over Mary Had a Little Lamb. Well, you guys can do the same thing anywhere. Like right now, with my hands moving all over the place here, you guys should be thinking, well, hey, there's a top wrist lock for Antonio. Oh, look, there's a double wrist lock. There's a front choke. You got to do this, and you got to see it from all different ways. So I don't think you were with me long enough, but Brian sure was. When I used to show, like, let's say Brian is sitting down on the mat, and I think Brian was involved with this. I would have somebody just put their foot, just standing up, like put their foot, so their foot's dangling over here. So now, like for example, the foot's down there. Here's their ankle. All right, toe hold them from here. And you know what? Sometimes people couldn't figure it out. Others were like, okay, let me think about this a minute. No, it's got to become automatic. You got to see that foot You got to already imagine the angle of how to get that stopper toe hold and go for it. Now, forget about it. Somebody will say, well, the guy would just kick loose. That's not the point. The point is you have to start seeing submissions from everywhere. And then once you can see it and know instantly how to lock it up, then you start working on the rest of your body, how you can stop the guy from rolling out, let's say, or punching his or her way out, et cetera, et cetera. So that's creativity. And that's what separates a super high level from just another person that is like a textbook, ABC kind of training.
You bring up a really good point, because one thing I've seen with a number of people that are very even high level submission people in competition is just when I look at the actual application of the hold, the finish itself, I don't think it's as maximal. They're not maximizing it as much as they can, or what I've experienced through your tutelage. It's not to say that they couldn't beat me, or that it's obviously working for them, but I still think that it's still maybe only 70-80% of what that hold could really be, just by looking at it, just from my understanding. And so, but it brings up something else that you just said, is by understanding the actual application or mechanics of the hold, you can almost reverse engineer it to where you can start applying that hold at different angles, as opposed to taking it the other way, which is, a certain level of control to enacting a submission. By understanding the submission itself and the finish and the mechanics of it, you can start thinking about it when it is maybe in an awkward position on your head or everything else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's the point. And you're more eloquent than I am, perhaps, because I've done it this way for, so many years. You sometimes lose track of how I struggled in the beginning to get this concept. But yes, and you become, it's like a vocabulary, and now you know when to insert certain words at certain times. And that's the gist of it. And I remember many times I would watch competitors, phenomenal athletes, but they would miss opportunities. And I don't mean like to compare it to a football player who drops the pass. Okay. That's just an oops moment. I'm saying there's times where they didn't, that they didn't see it. They didn't know. They didn't have the thought process of how to take it in this direction. And that's tough to watch, because it's like, this guy is a great athlete. If they only, if I could only work with them and show them this approach to it, it would elevate them, yeah, it's tough. But here's the thing. Nobody's training at, like, nobody else really has that thought process like I do. So everybody is, for the most part, on a generally even playing field. So it's not like 30% of the world is training with me and dominating, and the other 70% are catching up. Everybody's pretty much on the level playing field. But boy, I sure wish that I would. Yeah, if just I could up everybody's game, and that it's just a different approach. And it's like this guy today, this husband and wife, they were concerned with their size. And one of the things they liked about my YouTube videos and my Lost Art of Hooking is that, kind of shows size isn't the whole thing here. And no, it's not. So the principles will work for anyone if they want to study, and it's just as much, at least, mental as it is physical with me. You got to put some effort up here to grasp the concepts. But once you do, you caught lightning in a barrel.
Yeah, I like that. I like the approach of learning the concepts and the mechanics, because it just seems like you can apply them to everything. It's not just learning a technique. It's learning the concept. Like, for example, the figure 4 frame, and that applies to almost like most of the submissions. So once you master that, it translates to almost everything.
Okay, let's talk about that. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people here that are listening on a radio, or don't have the access to the YouTube video. You should watch this now. So let's say you're doing a figure 4, top wrist lock, we'll say, and you got your elbows way out like this, and you're thinking, well, okay, so what? I'm still tapping the guy out. Well, there's going to come a time, because now this is ingrained in you, with your elbows flared and all weak and all that. Jazz. Let's say you're doing a stopper toe hold, which is the same move, same frame, same everything. But now because your elbows are out, he's able to reach in and underhook it and break free. Whereas if you did it right with everything tight like this, there's just no way for them to counter. Okay. And that's a drastic example, but that's just one of many examples. So you want to do things right, perfectly right. Even if you do it poorly and get the submission, that's no good. Okay. That's just like you take these guys who chamber their punches, telegraph their punches. You might see a street fight video or somebody gets knocked out and you'll say, yeah, look, that works. Well, yeah, well, it worked against that guy. But try to do this against, Muhammad Ali or Tyson or whoever, right? It's not going to work. So you don't want to rely on, I don't believe in this. I'd rather be lucky than good. I'd rather be good, okay, and lucky. I want both. All right. So a little bit of luck is great, but I want to be good. So let's do things the right way. Your body is you're going to feel strong to your opponent. They're going to be like, Jesus, this guy's a bull, when he or she may not be. They're just doing everything proper. That's the thing. Just don't look for shortcuts and be your harshest critic. If you're in the gym and you're tapping somebody out, and you know you did it wrong or you didn't do it as good as you can. Don't gloat. Say, no, man. Tell your training partner, no. I didn't do it right. Let's do it again. I'll know when I get it right. And that's hopefully you have a coach that can be on the same page and say, yeah, Brian, you didn't do it exactly the way you got him, but that says more about Nico than it does you. Okay.
Sure.
So that's my take. Listen, let me tell you something. When I used to play music, especially not the drums so much, because I was fairly good at the drums. With the accordion, I had people that didn't know a lot about music, but they just thought it was so great. Oh, you're so good. You're better than such and such. No, I wasn't better than such and such. Okay. No way. So it's the same correlation. These people were oohed and awed. They thought I was great. Well, I knew better. So that's how it should be in your training. If you're tapping people out, don't gloat. Look over it overall. Who is this training partner? Were they really trying? How was my technique overall? Because a lot of guys will just or girls will get that big ego and think, hey, man, I'm tapping everybody out at my gym. I must be great. That's not always the case. It may be, but then again, it may not be. So self-analyzation, if your coach isn't going to give it to you, you got to do it. Get my drift?
For sure. Any tips on analyzing? I mean, I think you touched on a few there, but is there, sometimes people don't have a great coach or somebody who's willing to come forward with this info.
I know. I mean, as long as I'm alive, people can reach out to me and I will try to help them any way I can. As even at long distances, they know, it doesn't have to be here in person. You just have to start reaching out and trying to find that coach. I've read, and I've actually in the past met people who were sick, physically ill, and they went. Matter of fact, I know two people off the top of my head that ended up going to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, for treatment, and they both lived here in the Chicagoland area, but they went to Mayo because they weren't getting it done here in Chicago. Now, granted, their life was on the line, but they searched out, where can I go? Who's the best doctor for this particular case? And that's what people have to do here. Who's the best? If it means that much to a student, search someone out that you universally know, from outside sources sometimes, as opposed to, like, I like to use that term, the circle jerk, where you got like 1,000 fans or whatever the amount is, but most of them are just not, they're just fans. Now, you need like really high quality coaching. And that there's just no substitute for that. And you got to search it out, because odds are it won't be in your backyard.
So how do you get to be like your own biggest critic? I think some people struggle with that.
Yeah, well, that's psychological. I mean, there's just some people that just in anything in their life, They can't do that self-analysis. They, be it ego or some sort of other defect, they can't be hard on themselves. And then you have the other ones who are too hard on themselves. They think they're failures. This is just mental health. There's books out there that you can read on psychology. I'm a big, I studied REBT, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, founded by Dr. Albert Ellis. So I would highly recommend, everybody out there, he's passed away now, but get one of his books or start studying about that. The change, in essence, change the way you think and you change the way you feel. And that'll give you a little bit of an insight, and what it does is it stops all this blaming everybody else thing. Because boy, is there a lot of that going around where it's everybody else is wrong. It's you, it's everybody else. But you won't take your own, you will never take blame. And I've said so many times on this podcast and other places, like with my music career, I had the best teachers there was. There was no excuse for me not becoming the best. Except I failed. Me, no one else but me. Not my coaches or my music instructors, me. Okay. Just like with this fighting, I had the best coaches I could get. So I tried to make the absolute most of it. But later, with the music, I was older and I just didn't put in the effort. And I've said it before on here, because playing great wasn't going to end up costing me my life if I didn't. Whereas not knowing how to fight was going to cost me my life. So I did the Mayo Clinic kind of thing. My life depended on learning how to fight. So I had the best coach and I put my whole psyche into it. Now, it's hard, Nico, as you know, none of us want to be told we're no good or, whatever. We want to have some pride in ourselves, but you've got to keep that ego in check. You have to start by admitting fault, even in something minor, maybe a disagreement with a friend. Don't let it blow up. Stop talking negative about the person. Just own up to it. And learning how to apologize. We're going off track here. But one of the things with apologies, there's never a but in an apology. I'm sorry for what I did, but no, forget it. If you start learning how to apologize, really being sincere to someone else, it becomes easier for you to be sincere with yourself. So this is way beyond, I'm not, a licensed medical, clinical social worker here, but I mean, I'm an amateur psychologist, I guess you'd say, from all this personal study, but I had to learn this myself. So I studied on it,
Yeah, Tony, but I mean, the application is definitely there. It's talking about ownership. I mean, I think anyone can benefit from just having more ownership in their life, because ultimately you are in control. Now it is the narrative that you're pushing, or the world that you're creating, as opposed to you falling victim, so to speak, or being at the whim of other people's decisions or actions. Now you are essentially empowering yourself by having that attitude. Even if you're accepting fault, you're empowering yourself now and into the future.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it, and believe me, there are times when you are not at fault. Okay. It is the other person's problem or issue. That's true too. But when it comes to training, you have to set yourself, what is your ultimate goal here? Is your goal to lose 20 pounds, or is it to become the next Mr. Universe? All right. So with fighting, it's the same thing. How far do I want to take this? I'm the type of person that I wanted to be the best there ever was. So I wasn't just content with like learning how to do, let's say, a stop or toe hold, and that's it. I wanted to learn it all. And so everybody has to go down their own individual path. Some people want to just do boxing or karate, Shotokan, Taekwondo, whatever, that's fine too. So I still would say, whatever it is you're doing, try to find the best coach you can and interview the coach, talk to the coach, see what him or her, how their thought process is. See if they're on the same page with you. I met guys musically that, based on a conversation only and knowing how well they played, I wanted to learn from them too. Not full-time study, but I wanted to pick up some stuff. Okay. Because I knew that they could reach me. They could we're on the same page. They'll get through to me. Whereas there was others who were very, very good, better than me, but their attitude, I knew I couldn't, we're not going to jive. It's not going to work out here. They don't give a shit. They care about themselves. They don't care about me as a pupil. So yeah, there's a lot to it.
And bear in mind, there are unsung heroes, and there are people that maybe don't have the exposure, the marketing behind them that they, I mean, even when I was training with you, Tony, in the, 90s to 2000s in Chicago, you certainly had some clout via Lost Art of Hooking and other things, but there were other like bigger names, so to speak, in the Chicago area at the time that, wasn't appealing to me, however. And I'll even give you a specific example of a guy I know who was a high school wrestler, and he went on to compete at a Division I level at a very highly regarded program under an Olympian. And he would come back to the wrestling room that I was assisting in as a volunteer, and he was very candid and said, basically, I get better training, better coaching when I come back to my high school than I do under this Olympian, because essentially he's just, he's one of just dozens in the collegiate wrestling room, and that coach doesn't necessarily warm up to him and focus on him. Maybe he doesn't feel he's got the talent to be one of the top. So, I mean, that gives you an idea. And if I said these people's names, I mean, you would know who they are, the coach and everything. I'm not going to, but that's one example of in that particular instance, he's getting more out of a guy that you'd never heard of at the high school level than, a world renowned wrestler who's coaching in a top program.
Sadly, that happens a lot. And again, not just in martial arts or wrestling or what have you, just, other ways as well. Music too. Many times the greatest performers studied with people that, who are they? What's this? Who's this guy or gal? Yeah, it works that way. And a lot of it is like, it boils down to communication. This high school coach, let's call him that, probably was able to see the flaws in the Olympian, in the D1 guy, and would be able to approach him and say, look, this is what you got to tighten up on. Whereas the Olympian may have wanted the guy to be like learning all these new techniques. These are the techniques that took me to the world championships and to the Olympics. Well, those techniques may not be geared to this D1 wrestler. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case, obviously, I don't know, but that's an example of it. Just like Bruce Lee, our Bruce Lee can't wrestle like I wrestle, or we're not built the same. We have different backgrounds, and, we got to make the most of, his way, and I have to make the most of my way. So it's about bringing out the best in everybody. We're individuals, and that's like with the Tri-C, that's what that's all about. I train everybody differently. You're not all learning the same way. Everything's specific to the individual. You can't always get that in class settings. You just can't. There's just not enough time.
I think there's a difference between a great competitor and a great coach. I think a lot of times people get the misconception if somebody won all these titles or reached this pinnacle at the sport, they must be the best coach, which is usually not the case. I think the coaching is a different skill set, and you got to be able to reach people, and it's totally different. Like you said, a lot of times some of the best in the world, they're coached by people no one ever heard of because they had a really good coach. It's a totally different skill.
Well, and the world champions, or Olympic champions, whatever, they have unbelievable dedication. They're hours. I mean, it's just unending for that moment in time in their life when they can compete. So even if they do have the knowledge and they're willing to impart it, do you have that same depth of dedication that they did to reach their level? So that's a whole nother element to throw in there. And sometimes too, I know, like in my case, sometimes I can get an attitude when I hear people that just are bitching and about, oh, you live too far away, or oh, this is too hard, or man, I don't want to hear that. So, I had to go through it. I did it. You can do it. And a lot of times, like the great Ted Williams, the ball player, arguably the greatest hitter of all time. He didn't turn out to be a great coach, manager. He just, because he was so driven to excel, he didn't see that in a lot of other players. Okay. And so he just couldn't relate to them. So yeah, I can tend to be guilty of that too. When I don't see you trying hard, it's not that I don't give a damn, it's that I do care. And it's frustrating because I think you have potential and you're wasting it.
Tony, what's your thoughts on, because you mentioned about, that high level and sometimes the disconnect of somebody who's, essentially world class that maybe can't relate to somebody at a much lower level, maybe just a beginner or whatnot. I mean, you can discuss more on when somebody's learning fundamentals, and it doesn't matter what to pick a martial art. I mean, is it okay for them to be taught by somebody who's intermediate to just advanced because they're maybe more they're more recent to that kind of being the newbie or the beginner, as opposed to somebody who's, say, like, a black belt or master of so many years? I mean, what are your thoughts on, is there any kind of connection or correlation between those different types of?
That happens. Yeah. I mean, again, it would boil down to this intermediate or beginner instructor, let's say the guy that's, training the beginners. Are they grounded in the fundamentals? That is the key. You said that word, fundamentals. As long as what they're teaching you is appropriate, and they don't pass the baton to the next instructor that you now have to relearn everything. No, that's fine, because it can be difficult at times. It can be boring for the instructor or the music teacher or whatever to just go over the basics over and over. Takes a lot of patience. Bruce has he has great patience with that. He's really good at teaching the basics of things, but yeah, no, I've seen that and that's kind of sort of happened to me in a little, not with the fighting, but with some other stuff that I was involved in. I had like introduction lessons from somebody, and then I kind of advanced beyond that, musically. But I'm just worried that when you find a beginner instructor, that he or she's not a hack and teaching you bad things. Like, yeah, that's all I could say on that. But yes, that's common. I mean, look at college coaches, college wrestling. They haven't trained you since you were a junior wrestler. They got you once you came to their college, in most instances. Right? So now you're in a different program. This coach is now, or coaching team is there to take you to the next level. So it happens.
So maybe we'll touch more on the idea of conditioning. That's something that I'm always interested in, and some people, I think, don't really maybe focus on. What are your thoughts about the best way for someone to train, to apply? This is a very general question. To be, solid on the mat, as far as solid on the mat, or takedowns or grappling. What are some tips people can do when they're trying to plug into a conditioning routine outside of the mat time?
Yeah, it's all sport or activity related. So like a taekwondo guy would train differently than a wrestler. Wrestling is a lot of anaerobic, but work on your explosiveness. The conditioning now is taken on a world of its own, and people many times are there to promote their conditioning program, as opposed to being there to create a better, let's say, wrestler specifically, or MMA fighter specifically. Your training has to be geared, your conditioning has to be geared to your specific element that you're doing here, and getting great at it. So I would say, as a fighter in general, you have to have a good combination of aerobic and anaerobic capabilities and capacities. You have to work on your explosiveness. If I've seen one thing that, again, we're speaking general here, I don't see a lot of explosiveness. Now, many guys that came from a wrestling background have, a high level, they have that explosiveness, right? Because they're in on you, they're shooting in fast, and they get that concept of moving quickly. But you have to look at their world. Where do they come out of? 2-3 minute rounds, in international competition. So now they have 6 minutes of, let's say that explosiveness. I'm just, again, speaking general here, not specifically. Well, that's almost akin to like maybe one round in MMA. If the rounds are 5 minutes, let's call it almost even there. So now their conditioning, while their principles are fine, now they've got to work on elongating that. So you have to have a trainer that grasps this. And sometimes doing certain exercises like an Olympic weightlifter would do may not be the ones you want to do to get you better. So I'm all about plyometrics, interval training, and up and down. I made a video for somebody that's in my Tri-C program this week, geared towards his wife, different than the person I was talking to this morning. In essence, what I said was when I was lifting heavy, I wanted to work my top end and my bottom end, meaning I wanted to have that 1 rep max, that maximum strength. But then I also wanted to be able to have a lot of high reps. Okay. So I could bench, let's say I would go I would do 220, 230, then I would go down to 135. And I just wanted to be able to rep many at 135, 70, 75, who cares, until I was exhausted. So I wanted because again, now I'm not talking about training to be a world champion bench presser. I was training to be as strong as I could be in the bench, but that it would help me still be a great fighter, right? And not hinder that. So I tried to work both my 1 rep max and my muscular endurance. And as I show on the Worth the Wait, I did a lot of this explosive, popping it off my chest thing, learning to explode. Because in a grappling or fighting, let's call it a fighting situation, you may have to explode quickly. So you have to be ready to do that. And that also involves having your musculature proper, having your elbows at the right position, and it gets more involved. So that's where a conditioning coach who doesn't understand fighting or how your techniques are, you may be doing a specific conditioning exercise, but your body may not be aligned properly to carry over to when you're fighting. Okay, because people tend to simplify our skeletal system. We have a lot of shit going on here, and just slight little angles change things. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are training your body in the most specific way for your fighting, so you become a better fighter. I used to say to people 20 years ago or whatever it was, if it was all about just conditioning alone, Jack LaLanne would have been the toughest guy that ever lived. Okay, that guy was the Energizer Bunny. He could do anything physical. So it's got to be a balance here. Your conditioning has to be geared strictly for your fighting or whatever sport or activity you're interested in.
Yeah, I still use that. Oh, I'm sorry. One quick thought. I still use that that principle of, when we go just do heavy sets on the bench and then just a burn set just with 135 and applying that to other lifts. And yeah, to this day, it's a really good way to, I think one thing you also added benefit, it helps with recovery.
Yeah.
Getting blood back to the muscle like that. So
yeah, you're flushing the muscles, and you're getting that blood pumping through there and everything. And again, I'm not advocating, this is how you train to be Mr. Universe. All right. Different sport, different, you're looking at it. You need a different outcome for that. This is all about, because you want that repetition. You want to be able to, and you don't want to be lumbering. Okay. You don't want to be able to, be throwing punches like this. And you want to have that speed. You want to have that, everything I do is still about hand speed and speed. That's all part of it.
So if you're working explosively, what kind of weight are you using? Like something you would be able to get up like 20, 30 times, or is it a lighter weight, or is it more heavy?
Well, okay. First of all, you want injury prevention. So when you're doing anything explosive, you want to be warmed up and all of that. Well, I can't give you an exact number because everybody's strength level is different. But yeah, if there's something that you could do 35, 40 times, 50 times, that's fine. Rep it out, but be, like I say, explosive with it, but not shitty form. Okay. Again, it's all about your form. If you can't do it with good form, you're lifting too heavy. And this is not just benching. You do it with your curls. You could do it with any muscle group that would be pertinent. Okay. I'm not going to work on my calves like that. It's not going to enter into a fight like that. But yeah, you want to see how much you can lift, and don't be embarrassed of the amount of weight. If it's 20 pounds, it's 20 pounds. If it's just the bar, which is with collars, let's say 45 pounds, depending on the collars. We had heavier collars at my gym, so it was like 50 pounds, the bar. If it's just the bar, then it's just the bar. Who cares? Again, this is the ego. This is about self-analyzation. I don't care if somebody else is doing 200. If I can only do 50, I'll do 50. But yeah, just rep it out. Get that muscle pumped at the end and stretch. Like even now when I go to the gym, because I go to a Planet Fitness. So if anybody's a member, you know what it's like there. You don't actually have a bench press. You're lifting everything out of a power rack and what have you. So I'm on the bench flat, and I just reach out to the power rack, put my fingertips on there, and I'm just stretching my pecs in between each set. And that helps. But yeah, Nico, just don't think you have to go heavy. It's not always, for your 1 rep max. Yes, that's that, you're going to work up to that, but that takes time.
So do you apply the explosive lifting to like every single kind of lift, or is it mainly just your main lifts, like, a bench or a squat?
Well, I don't squat because of my back, but you could do it with the squat, curls, even overhead presses that I was doing. Just anything that will correlate to my fighting. Okay. As I said, I wouldn't do it if I was working calves, my calf muscles or something like that, or leg extensions. I'm not going to do that. But just for the core muscles, the ones that see, to me, grappling especially it's push pull. There's a lot of push pulling going on, rows, and just pulling and pushing, locking up those arms with the curls, the chin ups. Those are the types of things. Now, I didn't do explosive chin ups. I see people doing these chin up things, and they're ridiculous because they're not doing a chin up. They're cheating so much with their momentum. It's not even legit. But with the curls, I would do that, and I would do super slow too. I showed this on a worth the weight. Really, really, really slow curls like this, where it could take sometimes 2 minutes to go up and 2 minutes to go down. You don't use 200-pound barbells to do that shit. Okay.
Yeah, I've done that. That's a nightmare. The slow curls. It works. I mean, if you want to talk about just a very a quick shot in the arm to get your strength up, yeah, those slow curls. Oof.
Right, but that's not something you train exclusively. You throw it in there every few weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever. So it's a variety. Now here, just to give you, because you're smart. Think of every time you sparred or any fight you've ever been in, what have you, and how you ended up. And you got to figure out what was your weakness. Did your arms gas? Did you gas? What was it? Did your legs buckle because you fatigue? And then set a program up for that. Work on that. Work on your deficiencies first. You kind of want to be balanced, because that's all it takes is one bad weakness, and your whole house, it's like a house of cards. It'll come tumbling down in a fight or in anything. Okay. So I can get specific with people if I knew them, like you. If we talk offline, about exactly where you want to be, and I know you enough, so I got to be careful about giving general, advice, because everybody's different, like general health. But yeah, you want to balance it out.
So Tony, for me, like you were saying with it, think about, what's failing you during grappling. For me, it would be, especially during like the later rounds when everybody's super sweaty, when you're grappling no gi, is just getting grips. Everything just so slippery. So what kind of things do you think you could do to kind of improve on that?
All right. Now everybody will say, well, work your grip. Well, okay, work your grip, but work your brain, work your improvisation. We'll use the top wrist lock again. We'll stick with that as an example. You want to get that top wrist lock. The guy's so sweaty, you can't. That's fine. You try to go for it. You already said he's slipping out. it's when he's slipping out that you make your transit. You know he's going to slip out. So that's where you make your transition into something else. Okay. Be it a neck crank, be it a leg lock, or a different kind of arm lock where you can't slip out, perhaps a straight arm bar, or maybe you got a better chance of getting the double wrist lock if you can grab, the inside of his palm and hook it properly, right? This is where you develop your instincts and your improvisation. And that's great that you brought that up, because that is a classic example of maybe not even if the person is slipping out, but maybe you're sweaty, or you're just kind of tired, or whatever it may be, and you're blowing it. Okay, you got to transition. You got to move on to something else. The neck, man, if that guy's sweating that bad and it's no gi, the neck is very easy to get because it's slippery now. You can easily slide in.
Yeah.
You're in the right position. If it's the legs, the toes, the ankles, I should say, not toes specifically, but for a toe hold or something, try to go for that. This is great. This is where your creativity has to come into play. I don't expect a beginner. I don't even expect somebody that's been training for a few months to be able to do this at a high level. But in a matter of months, years, maybe 2 years, 3 years, who knows, maybe sooner, depending on the person, you'll be able to start transitioning and seeing these things. What was it? The other day, I think I was watching the Olympics, the weightlifting. And I always told everybody, when I see a guy, especially a big dude in public, I always look for where are they going to look weakest, right? The one thing I saw about these Olympic lifters is their ankles. Now, these are strong men, but their ankles were thin. They weren't like gigantic, right? So, you look at something like that, toe hold. Okay, maybe I'll go for that Achilles lock or a toe hold or something on a guy like that. Just saying. Well, that's how you have to think about this. Like when you're bringing up topics like you just brought up about slipping when they're wet, you should already know before they get wet. You should assess them and see where do you think their weaknesses really are in their body, outside of obvious stuff like the eyeballs and the groin and what have you. So make a contingency plan to try to attack those spots. And that just comes through practice. You can actually do this in training. You can have somebody, now this sounds weird and don't make a joke out of it, but you can have somebody oil themselves up, man, and so you can't get a grasp, right? And see how that works. And then work on getting the top wrist lock, even though the guy's full of, lotion or whatever, oil, still try to make it work. You can. There's other ways to vary your grip.
I want to touch on that because you said contingency plan, and earlier in our conversation, we mentioned also kind of those go-to areas or your safety zones. That's obviously done proactively before the match starts or before you're even just training in the gym. Like, what are some ways you kind of build that framework or that outline in just having that? I mean, is it kind of a blanket, do you have like a boilerplate version you apply to different opponents, or are you trying to like put different body types in categories and assessing from there? I'm just wondering how somebody can map that out.
All right, well, let's look at boxing. The two most traditional is your cover up, your turtle stance, where you're all covered up in a shell, and clinching. All right, those are two things that are taught ingrained in a boxing, so that even if they're, almost on their way out from punches, they're not thinking clearly. They're taught to either cover up or grab a hold, right? And so it's examples like that. There's similar things like that on the ground. Let's say I'm on top. We'll use that as an example. And for whatever reason, this just isn't going right. Well, I'm going to just get back up on my feet. I want to be in that position where I can pop up. And especially if it's a street fight, I always want to be able to get up quickly in case somebody else is entering into the picture here, okay, to try to attack me, or Mr. Nice Guy who thinks they're going to help. And in the meantime, as they're breaking us up, I get cold conked by the other guy, knocked out. So that's a good example. Being in a position where I can rip to release a hold. So ripping can go both ways. It can create energy on the guy if he's just laying there, or it can take energy away, kind of thing. I want to always make sure that I'm one rip away from freedom and clarity here. See, these are my safe spots. These are just a few examples. There's more. If I was going live, I could shout it out to you. I said, well, here I would probably do this, as a safe zone. So you have to, yeah, I have these all mapped out, and I'm not going to say they're completely universal, but for the most part they are. And I know that these are like my reset buttons. Okay, okay, let me start afresh here, right? With a clean slate, because this got all screwed up. So you got to kind of have that. And that's why I always talk about, don't try a submission or a move that's going to put you on a dead end street. You always want to have an escape route. You always want to be able to get out if shit goes wrong.
Fascinating.
Well, it's common. I mean, you would think it's common sense, and it is, except that it gets lost in the mumbo jumbo of everything. You just don't ever want to end up in trouble where where you cannot get out of this. I mean, if it happens, either the guy you screwed up, or the guy or girl was like so much better that you just got to lick your chops and say, okay, I hope I live. I hope this didn't cost me my life.
Well, I think we're coming up on an hour plus or a little more. Start wrapping up the conversation. Any final thoughts from you gents on stuff we covered or did not?
No, it was just great being with you, Brian, and of course with you, Nico, and no, that's just about it for me. I mean, I just wish everybody out there, thank you again for listening. Like Bruce says, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, think about joining the membership program or the Tri-C program if you can, and keep supporting us, and we'll continue to try to do this as long as we possibly can.
Well said. Well, it's been a great time. Thanks for having me today, and probably be there on the next time too.
Good enough. See you,
Thank you,
Nico.
guys. See you.